And now on to joy. Now, joy, what piece of music do you think comes to mind? Yes, the Ode to Joy, which has been around for 200 years or so, or something like that. Beethoven, the Ninth Symphony, the last movement, and it's called the Ode to Joy. Most of you will know what I'm talking about, and those of you who are not familiar with classical music, if I sing it, then you will know what it is. Unfortunately, I'm very bad at singing, but it goes like Freude schöner Götter, Funken, Tochter aus Elysium. And now I can't stop. Wir betreten feuertrunken himmlische dein Heiligtum. Deine Zauber binden wieder, was die Mode streng geteilt. Alle Menschen werden Brüder, wo dein sanfter Flügel weilt. No. I'm better at it than I thought. Now I'd like to give you the translation, because many people are familiar with the tune and the song, but perhaps not so many people know what it actually means. Now the words Beethoven took from the poet Schiller, who wrote this poem, Ode to Joy, which is a praise of joy. So I'll just give you the beginning of what I just sang, or if you can call it singing. The translation of this reads, joy, beautiful divine spark. Now joy, the poet personifies the state of joy. So he speaks of joy as if joy were a person. Joy, beautiful divine spark, daughter from Elysium. Elysium is a celestial realm in Greek mythology. So joy is the daughter, in other words, comes from the celestial realm. It is something divine. We enter your sanctuary burning with fervor, O heavenly being, still addressing joy. O heavenly being, your magic brings together what custom or convention has sternly divided. So it reunites what human custom has divided. All men shall become brothers, of course that includes sisters. All men shall be, and that includes women, it's humans. All humans shall become brothers and sisters where your gentle wings hover. The gentle wings of joy. That is the translation of the old beginning of the Ode to Joy. So it brings you back to the state of connectedness with all other humans. And therefore there is something divine in the state of joy. That is the essence of this poem that Beethoven liked so much that he put it to music. It goes on later, there are more lines which we don't need now, but towards the end it has this beautiful line, be embraced millions, this kiss to the whole world. That is towards the end when it says, seid umschlungen Millionen, diesen Kuss der ganzen Welt. And then there's the celestial voices of the choir. beautiful piece. It's absolutely divine, especially also the message that it contains. Now, I'm not going to just play the whole piece here. There's a particular version of it that I discovered that is called the flash mob version of it. Now, I love flash mobs. I don't know if everybody is familiar with that term. It means when a group of people come together and do something very strange or unusual, unexpectedly. Now, flash mobs are not spontaneous because they need to be planned beforehand, but they disrupt the normal workings of routine everyday life or existence. So, for example, you get flash mobs when people, like 200 people in a public place, suddenly freeze for 5 minutes in whatever position they happen to be in. And then all the people who don't know what's going on, they go, what happened? In a way, you could say it has no particular purpose, but perhaps there is a purpose, and often it awakens people out of their habitual slumber. And sometimes flash mobs is music, that suddenly a group of people begin to perform a piece of music. It looks totally spontaneous, but of course they all plan to do it. But all the people who experience that are transported into a state of astonishment. And this is the piece here which has been around the internet, and some of you may know it. Some people say, oh, I don't like this because it was financed by a bank and it's used as a commercial, in the same way that our first piece that we saw this evening is a commercial. But if that is a commercial, it doesn't say you need to use our bank in order to be in a state of joy. No, they just financed it, and here it is. So there's no link between the bank and I have no objection to it whatsoever. If they spend the money on something beautiful like that brings joy to people, well, why object to that? Now, where this happened was in Spain, in a small city near Barcelona, Sabadell, and the piece is called the Sabadell Flash Mob. The musicians are professional musicians. Now, the most beautiful thing, apart from the music, and it's a short version of it, just 5 minutes or so, the most moving thing, apart from the music itself, is the reaction of the people who don't know what's going on, and how they become transformed from their habitual state into suddenly and experiencing joy or astonishment. They are stopped in their track, their mind stopped, and they go, son. So all the different reactions of people are very moving, very touching. So let's watch it now, the Sabadell Flash Mob. Here we go.
We are moving into a time of turbulence. Feel this is only the beginning. And at the same time, this becomes an enormous opportunity for awakening into this dimension. Because the strange thing is, no human being awakens from within their comfort zone. Sad fact. The ego doesn't like that, so the fact that there's applause here means you're already beyond ego and you've recognized the truth of it. And there's a deep, deep truth in that. I have not met any human that awakened from within their comfort zone. They awaken through facing, to use some almost a biblical term, they awaken through facing tribulation. Tribulation. In this world you will find tribulation, said Jesus. Wherever you go, the Buddha said the same thing. In this world you will find dukkha, said the Buddha, translated as suffering, can also be translated as misery, unsatisfactoriness, and all just plain unhappiness. So that's what the Buddha said, wherever you go, you'll find that unless you awaken. And Jesus said, in this world you will find tribulation. But, and then he added, but I have overcome the world. I have overcome the world, and he shows people how to overcome the world. What does that mean? Jesus did not have any worldly power, so in that sense, he hadn't overcome the world like Alexander the great conqueror. None of that. Overcome is an internal realization. You no longer derive your identity from the things of this world, but you can still live with them and play with them. It's fine. They're actually quite beautiful. When you play with the things of this world, you can appreciate form. And when it leaves you, or it breaks, or it's taken away, you did not need it for your sense of identity. You can enjoy this world when you do not need it to give you an identity. You can enjoy other human beings too, and their company and their presence, but you don't need them to complete your identity. Why don't you need them anymore? Because you already have found your identity and are connected with your essence identity as the awareness, as the consciousness. It's who I am. And so this is a wonderful freedom, and now people will have to find that because we are moving into such uncertain times. Many people will lose things that gave them their identity, and that's a great thing. And many people will lose also a sense of certainty or security that was delusory anyway. No matter how many insurance policies you have, it doesn't mean that the universe is not impermanent and fleeting. And to look to things or people or situations or places or attainments, to look to those things for your identity, that leads to suffering and unconsciousness. Your primary purpose is to find the and stay connected to the depths of who you are in being, so that you are not just a human, but you are a human being. You're conscious of the being dimension. In the being dimension, you have no age. You're not young or old. You have no gender. Sorry. Uh, you have no status. In the being dimension, whether in the eyes of the world your life up to now has been a fantastic success story, or the most dreadful failure, to take two extremes, makes no difference. The being is beyond that. There's no age in it, there's no gender in it, there's no differentiation in that. It's the source. Then you no longer need to defend an identity that was fictitious anyway. You are comfortable sometimes with not being right. Others show you, no, you're wrong. Oh, really? Whereas before, being right was an important part of your conceptual identity. The most dreadful thing for an egoic self is to be shown to be wrong. Because it's a death, it's a kind of death. And you still have opinions. You have opinions, but the opinions do not turn into an identity. If opinion turns into identity, then we get all the drama that we have on social media and all that. Because opinions have become identities. It's crazy. What is an opinion? It's a concept, a construct. But you can still have the opinion and still voice your opinion without the defensiveness and the aggression that would be there if you equate opinion with identity. But you need to have something more powerful, deeper than this mind-made identity. And that is the essence of who you are beyond thought. So it is very important, as much as possible, to remind yourself to come into, and here we come to one of the main portals, or the main portal into the transcendent consciousness, come into the present moment. That is where the portal into the transcendent consciousness begins to open up. For the present moment is a portal. In the present moment, as much as possible, you take your attention into the present moment, and it has stages. It is basically, well, say 2 or 3 stages, depending how you divide it. The first thing, when you become present, so remind yourself, have little practices. I wrote about that too. Whenever you're waiting for something, become present. No matter whether you're in the car or just a minute waiting for the elevator or waiting for somebody to answer the phone, a human being to answer the phone, it could take hours. So you're waiting, and why waste that beautiful time and use it for presence? Now, how does it work? How do you transform an irritation while you're waiting into presence? So you get very irritated. Airports are very irritating places these days. For many people, don't have to be, but for many people they are. So you stand. Security is very slow. And it could take an hour to get through security. Oh my God, why can't they? They should have done something about it a long time ago. Why can't they? They're just so incompetent. It's just unbelievable, completely unbelievable. I'm not ever going to use this airport again. I don't know. And the rest of the world is bad too. I just don't like people anymore. And all. We are going to hell in a handbasket. I can see that. You become very unhappy. There's a very unhappy person. Why is this person unhappy? Well, because obviously, can't you see what's happening? This is why I'm happy. You see, I've been standing here for 1 hour, hardly moving, for God's sake. Okay, why don't you experiment with something? What do you mean? Experiment with being in this situation without adding any thought to it. The baggage of thought. This situation, don't add any interpretation to it. Is that even possible? Yes, it's possible. The interpretation is a habit. It's no more than a deeply ingrained mental habit. But you don't have to be stuck with a deeply ingrained mental habit. Don't add any thought. Don't interpret this moment, just let it be as it is. Okay, I'll try it. But if it doesn't work, I'm going to get back to you. Let's try it. Okay, so you're standing there, and now suddenly you do not add thought to this, which means you haven't been standing here for an hour. You're only standing here now, because the hour was thought. Time is thought. The hour, the duration was created by thinking. But in the present moment, you are standing here now, not for 1 hour. You're not adding any thought.
For the past several years, I've been making a concerted effort to live a especially sort of, conscious, present, spiritual path, and doing yoga and meditation and retreats and that sort of thing. And now when I hear people talk about, spiritual stuff, I kind of cringe. It's like, I feel like there's this spiritual thing that's like separate from this, this special dimension. And at first it was really great, because I was meditating 10 hours in a weekend, and I could tell everybody how cool it was and, how special and unique I felt, practicing this special spiritual life. And now I listen to what you say and other people say, and I just want to hear about how I'm no one. And I mean that sincerely in being in this, but just not having to, even the, I am conscious, all these words that just seem to get in the way a lot of the time. I mean, they're concepts and everything. But I feel the sweetness of really not having to be this special, unique, spiritual person on top of being a regular person. It's like this, double-decker sandwich that I got to carry around, and it's getting stale, and I don't know. I don't know if there's a question in there, but
I know
maybe you could speak to that.
Thank you. Yes. Okay. Thanks. Well, you overdid it a little bit with your spiritual practice. And hence the reaction now, because you have to get back to some normality after all that specialness over that, both your spiritual practice, where you thought of yourself as special and your practice as special. You went quite far to an extreme, and you're now experiencing the reaction to that extreme. And that's good. In other words, you don't want to hear about anything spiritual anymore. I've had it, right? So you overdid it. Now there's a reaction. Don't mention to me anything spiritual anymore, you say. But, of course, you know the famous expression, what is it, the baby and the bathwater? Don't throw out your baby with the bathwater.
Well, it's all spiritual. So
it's all spiritual.
That it's so separate.
So now, first you went to that extreme. Now you go to an extreme of reaction, and eventually you end up in the middle, where
Every moment is spiritual as it is. There's nothing special. Spirit is not separate from daily existence. So that's when we say spiritual, we are not referring to some realm out there that is to be achieved at some point where you become more special than you are now. It's not going to happen. It's here and now. We're going deeper into the here and now. That's spiritual. Now you are a little bit tired of these words because you went too far to that extreme. So you have to realize if you're a little bit perhaps like a Christian who was once very religious and suddenly got fed up, and then occasionally I have people in talks who are ex-Christians, and the moment occasionally I say Jesus said, they go, oh, don't talk to me about or anything that's remotely Christian. I don't want to hear that. I've had all that. So they don't realize, because of that, of course they had a somewhat distorted view of what the whole thing was about, so they didn't, but they can't stand the terms anymore. And that's fine, it's a phase. You'll come through that. Maybe it's happening already. It's the ordinariness. Spiritual means the more spiritual you are, the more ordinary you are, the more non-special you are. And again, for the ego, that means, okay, I have to become more non-special. How do I become ordinary? Okay, that's, I need somebody to teach me to be ordinary. So I understand your dilemma, and perhaps you understand it also. And so this, nothing special, chopping wood, carrying water, as Zen defines spirituality ultimately. What is the spiritual life? Chopping wood, carrying water, which is the kind of thing you do in Zen monasteries at daily doing. In my case, it's buying some food in the store, going to have a cup of coffee, taking the dog for a walk in the forest, listening to the BBC World News, having a glass of wine occasionally with a meal, watching a movie, nothing extraordinary, and so quite an ordinary existence. And so it's hiding in there. The spirituality is in there. It's not away from there. Just this. And so I'm sorry about these words that we use, but language is limited. So we have to use certain words. And perhaps the emotion around these words then eventually is going to go, and they become neutral again, and you can use them for what they are, which is simply useful pointers, no more. Thank you. So, your task is not only to find moments in your life when you become still, alert, present, to realize for yourself the possibility of stepping into no mind, not thinking, and yet being fully conscious and alert at It's a wonderful, wonderful thing. It's part of the awakening, essential part of the awakening, to be able to stop thinking, for example, now, and now, and now. Don't get scared. It's only the ego that might get scared because it says, I'm disappearing. There's just a nothingness. You're not disappearing. Who you are essentially is emerging more fully when the mind stops, like now. And there's not just a nothingness. There is an intense field of alive presence. It has no form, it has no location. It is within and without. So it's wonderful to be able to step into that state of consciousness. It means you're awakening. The awakening process is happening. Even to say you are awakening isn't quite correct. But the awakening process is happening. But make sure that it's not confined to moments that you set aside to become still, to become present, or to listen to this teaching. That's wonderful. You need that also until you don't need it anymore. But it's essential to have your daily life, your working life, at work, your relationship life, relationships, both family relationships, other kinds of relationships at work, interspersed continuously with the presence of the stillness, so that you don't spend, let's say where you work in an office, you don't spend 9 to 5 getting lost in doing and in your mind and getting upset and getting angry and all participating in all that. And then you get home, and then finally you sit when you've had your dinner, or before and finally you say, now I'm going to meditate or be present or practice stillness, and then you become still. Well, it's better than nothing, but it hasn't changed your life. Make sure there's not a separation between your spiritual life and your working life. Some people tell me, well, I can be spiritual when I'm alone. I can be spiritual when I'm walking in nature. But I lose it when I start talking to people or I'm back at work. So you need to be aware of that, so that even while you are engaged in doing, you're still rooted in being. Be aware of your mind, of thoughts that arise, so that you don't become possessed by every thought that arises. It helps when the mind is very active and is being challenged by people or events. It helps to have some attention in the inner energy field of your body. And feel the presence that is in every cell of the body. It's alive. You need to know and decide for yourself that you don't want to be part of the madness of this world anymore. And when something challenges happens, you lose something, your bank manager calls about something, and then the assumption of the egoic mind is, this isn't the time to be spiritual, I have to deal with this first. What does it mean to be spiritual? It means to be aware of yourself as the presence. That's your prime responsibility in life. The very purpose of your life is that. The very purpose of your life is not to succeed at this or that undertaking or endeavor or business activity or whatever. That is not the purpose. To succeed on that level is not your real purpose. It's a secondary purpose, perhaps. But your primary purpose is presence. To know yourself as the presence, as the alert presence. And then deal with things. And then you will notice what happens or does not happen. You recognize that as secondary. Whether some endeavor succeeds or doesn't succeed is also secondary. You are very active, and yet you realize everything is secondary to something else that's primary. I've told the story before, I haven't mentioned it in a while. The spiritual teacher Krishnamurti, who passed away I believe in 85, he used to travel around the world giving talks for 50 years or more. And in one talk towards the end of his life, he said, people have often asked me what my secret is, and now I'm going to tell you what my secret is. Everybody got very alert suddenly, including the people who had been following him for 30 years without getting it. And then he said, my secret is this: I don't mind what happens. So the people listening, they thought something else was going to come, but that was it. I don't mind what happens. What does that mean? First of all, in the English language, I don't mind is very different from I don't care. If English is not your native language, you can look up the difference. If English is your native language, you know intuitively that I don't care is a negativity, and I don't care what happens. I don't care what happens to me anymore. I'm fed up with life. I don't care. That's you still do care. You're in a negative relationship to the world and to yourself. I don't mind is a detachment from what happens or doesn't happen, but you can only be detached because you are rooted in something deeper, in being. And with that comes a detachment with which you not only observe things in other people and events around you, but also a detachment that comes into your doing, the way you relate and do things. First of all, an important aspect of detachment is you are not attached to the result. You're not attached to the outcome. It creates a lot of fear and anxiety if you are attached. So you do your best. If it works out, fine. If it doesn't work out, it's also fine. Because you are rooted in being. And the strange paradox is, it's more likely to turn out fine if you're rooted in being and you're not anxious about the outcome, because the anxiety about the outcome creates a lot of secondary negative energy. If the outcome is threatened, for example, you get angry. If the outcome is threatened, you get upset. Lost, completely lost. So that is the secret of life. The rootedness in being. And then enjoy the spectacle of life around you. Every moment there's beauty, every moment. And you can even enjoy the doing. You might not be as hyperactive as somebody who is completely lost in doing, but that you're doing whatever you do will be more effective, because there'll be an unconditioned intelligence behind it and a power flowing into it that is deeper than the merely personal realm of mental power, not separate from it, but deeper. Every moment there is beauty and aliveness around you. You appreciate what is. So I wish you happy Christmas, and I'm here in British Columbia, Canada, just outside Vancouver, and the beauty here is the trees and the sky. You can perhaps see a little bit of that on the screen. And wherever you are, it'll be something else. Just give it attention, whatever is there. Acknowledge it's being. When you are rooted in being, you can acknowledge not only the being, you can sense the inherent aliveness of other humans, of animals, and even of inanimate objects, of nature of course, but even inanimate objects. Everything has a beingness to it, it is. So I'll leave you with that and the contemplation of the trees here that I can see from my place. I wish you well. Be at peace. Thank you. If you want to learn about not having a mental self-image, watch your dog or your cat. They don't have an opinion about who they are. They just are who they are. How can I love myself? What is this? I don't remember ever saying that you should love yourself. So is it bad to love yourself? No, of course not. Is it better than to hate yourself? Yes, of course. Now, let's start with many people are uncomfortable with themselves. They dislike who they are. Perhaps they dislike their body, how they look. Perhaps they dislike who they are as a person, don't feel they are good enough, or are self-critical a lot. Many people live with a negative self-image, which of course all consists of certain types of mind activity, and that's not pleasant. And it may be for some of those people, once they realize that they live with a mind pattern that continually criticizes them and says negative things about them, they begin to realize that it's a mind pattern. This self-hatred is a mind pattern, and that it's harmful, it's not pleasant, and they can go beyond it and begin to replace it with more positive thoughts about themselves. And having positive thoughts about yourself, that kind of thing would perhaps usually be called beginning to love yourself, to feel good about yourself. But it's not easy, that shift from feeling bad about yourself to feeling good about yourself. Sometimes it requires a lot of convincing. I would regard loving yourself as perhaps an intermediate stage in one's awakening. But the essence of the awakened consciousness is that you go beyond having a particular idea in your mind that represents yourself, a mental self-image that you relate to. Because basically it's ego, a mental self-image of who you think this is what I am, this is who I am. If you want to learn about not having a mental self-image, watch your dog or your cat. They don't have an opinion about who they are. They just are who they are. So that removes an enormous amount of problems from their lives. Of course, they don't have the mind activity that creates a self-image in their head. They are pre-mind, and therefore their life is far less problematic than human life. You can see how wonderful it is not to have a self-image. You can look at an ugly dog or an ugly cat. They don't have a problem with that. Even an overweight dog or cat, they're okay. No self-image. Or a dog that has lost its sexual powers. It doesn't become part of the dog's self-image. The dog says, "Oh my God, I can't father puppies anymore. I've lost my male power. How dreadful!" It's not part of it. The dog doesn't have a self-image. If there's no sexual desire, there's no sexual desire. There's no thinking around that. Nothing to do with me. There's no problem. Or the cat suddenly can't jump up this fence anymore. It's getting too old. The cat doesn't say, "Oh, I've become useless now. What's the point in carrying?" It just is. It doesn't detract from the self-image of the cat because it doesn't have a self-image. So how wonderful to live without an image of who you are, because you are the presence. You're not the form that's a temporary expression of you, but you are the underlying presence. And when you feel yourself as the underlying presence, you don't need to live through some mental image of who you are. And that's where you go beyond hating yourself, but you also go beyond loving yourself. It's just being yourself. It's similar to the dog, but it's not a regressive step. It's a step forward for humans. You go beyond the mind-made sense of self. You don't fall back to the pre-mind-made sense of self. You don't need to live through a self-image of who you are. The more presence that comes into your life, the more you feel yourself to be the presence, not some mental construct. Of course, somewhere on the periphery of your mind, there may still be there is a little bit of a mental construct, but it does not provide the basis for your sense of identity anymore. Of course, yes, you know your body is too thin or too fat, says the mind, but that's just how it is, or this or that, lacking. Yes, there's some vague self-image still there, but it is not the foundation for your sense of who you are. The foundation for your sense of who you are is you are awareness, you are presence. And that's a liberation from the self-image. And that's wonderful. So it's not go beyond hating yourself and then also go beyond loving yourself. If you need to go through the stage of loving yourself because you cannot go directly from hating yourself to presence, then do. Go through the stage of loving and then step beyond that. existence is an interesting word. To exist comes from Latin, exist. Ex means out, just in the word exit or ex. Exist, to stand out. Exist from stand. So to stand out is to exist. Something is manifested. It has a form. Existence. You exist as a person. But the essence of who you are does not exist. It's not, has no form, no manifested form. And this is why I often say the important thing, you are a human being. There are two dimensions to who you are. There's the dimension of the temporal, of the dimension of past and future, where our life unfolds. That's the human. And you are the being that is the transcendent dimension of who you are. And to become aware of awareness is to become, that's another word for being, to be. You become aware that you are. And thinking must stop for a moment in order to become aware of that which transcends all form. Another word for this is self-transcendence. Self-transcendence. That is the liberation from a limited and ultimately fictitious sense of identity. As much as possible in your daily life, practice moments of pure awareness. Doesn't matter for how long. Moments of pure, like now, this moment. As I stop speaking for a few seconds before I start speaking again, be aware that you are aware. So one could say you disappear as a person, but you are there very powerfully as a presence. You disappear as a person temporarily, but in a very powerful way, there is a presence which you cannot define. And you then access this dimension that is one way of putting it. It's pure power, pure intelligence. Anything created arises out of that. And as you invite that into your life, it can and will transform even the way in which you live as a person. And that happens without you thinking that you need to transform yourself. A transformation happens even to the person, although the person obviously will always have certain limitations. You are good at this, but you're not good at that, and so on. The person obviously cannot be perfect. There's always certain characteristics that define a person. It has form. That's understood. But that dimension, as you access that, flows into the conditioned entity that we call the person, and can use the personal mind and express itself through that. In other words, inspiration will happen more easily. Intuition happens more easily. A creative ability develops more easily. Obviously, you need to have some mastery, some expertise in some fields. Then this creative energy from the unconditioned realm of being or consciousness can flow into what you do and transform and empower it. Of course, you need to already, in the case of activity, you need to have already developed something that it can flow into. In my case, it cannot flow into becoming a fantastic swimmer or tennis player. It's not going to happen. It's not going to empower me on that level. And it's too late for that. Nor is it going to come up in me with the creative realization, finding the unified field theory in physics that Einstein unsuccessfully looked for, the unified field theory. It's not going to come through this mind, because the mind, this is not, it has not developed that particular avenue through which spirit or consciousness could express itself creatively. But it is expressing itself creatively through these words. So not through nuclear physics or sports. It can, in the case of this particular person, whatever it may be, where people develop the great new, like Elon Musk, the latest thing about electric cars or whatever. I'm not going to be able to do that. This is not how the creative energy can express itself through me, nor I'm going to be a great dancer. It's much too late for that too. But you might. Or it might not be express itself in any of those ways too. It is possible that as you access that dimension, the power of now, as you access that dimension within yourself, it may not even express itself through some creative endeavor. It could be something else. It could be the way in which you relate to other humans. Changes, it affects everybody that you come in contact with. There are some patterns in the mind that everybody inherits, that even for advanced presence practitioners like yourselves can still reassert themselves. Because they are so normal. By the way, my definition of normal is insane, as you probably know. And you may be able to catch yourself many times during the day when one of these normal patterns reasserts itself. And of course, one of the most prevalent patterns is reducing the present moment to a means to an end. It could be a simple thing like you get up in the morning and you're getting ready to go to work. What is the quality of your doing during that time of getting ready to go out? Or here, you got up this morning, getting ready to go to breakfast and then come here. How do you experience that time? Are you able to be present in what you're doing, or is the doing no more than a means to an end? And that's a huge difference, whether you fold your pajama after and put it on your bed. Do you give it attention? Is it a pleasant thing to do? Do you acknowledge the being of this pajama and feel the texture and give it some loving attention and then you put it away? Or is it, what's the next thing and the next and the next? Because if this habit is always there, if the present moment is the stepping stone, and not much more than a stepping stone to the next moment, which is always a mental projection, because it never comes. The next moment never comes. Does it? No, I don't think it does, because when the next moment comes, it's the present moment. So the next moment doesn't come, it can never arrive. There's only this moment. But if your habit is to treat this moment most of the time as a means of getting to the next moment, so not being fully in it, but mentally being somewhere else, and then just need, so the basic attitude is, I just need to get this moment out of the way. Then I will get to a better one. And that is a very deep-seated pattern that prevents you from being present. But it's only when I voice it like this that it becomes apparent to you, because otherwise you won't even see it, because it's so normal to live in such a way that unconsciously it's not, you don't tell yourself in your mind that I just need to get this moment out of the way because the next one will be better. That is an unspoken and unconscious assumption behind what you do. And it's not only, people also treat entire life periods in that way. Then it's not only, of course, most fundamentally the present moment, but they also treat entire chunks of their life in that way. For example, you're waiting for the weekend, so it's only 2 more days of having to go to work, and then there comes, or you're waiting for something else. Getting a better job, finding the person who is going to make me happy. It's only, in the meantime, I'm just ticking over, I'm just waiting for, what's the expression? I'm waiting for the big break or whatever. I'm waiting for the big thing to happen, and finally I can start living. When that happens, whatever form that takes, when that happens, then my life will really start. And that's another way, another manifestation of the same dysfunction. It can be a helpful thing to be in unusual surroundings, because it's easier to be more present in unusual surroundings. That's the advantage of traveling. And that's why, as I've written somewhere, many people feel more alive when they travel. And when they're at home, their surroundings are so familiar that they lose presence completely. They don't see things anymore. They go from where they live to their office or wherever it is, done it so many times, they don't see it anymore. And you would be surprised, even at home, your usual surroundings, you might have a painting on your walls and haven't looked at it in the past 3 years. Might be very beautiful. Or your garden, or the plants in there. So this is the familiarity can lead to a kind of semi-sleep-like state. And when you're traveling, you go, oh, And the good thing is you might not even have a name for all the new things you see. At home you know what everything is called. But here you see things, you might see a weird animal. The mind stops because you can't name it, and that's a wonderful thing. Or you see trees that you haven't seen before, and you go, oh. Or you might say to your friend, look at that. And you might notice in the moment of looking at that, you're not naming it in your mind because you don't know what it's called. So there's a moment, a few seconds of just being present, being the presence rather than the naming person. So it helps to be wide awake to your sense perceptions, because that is one way of coming into the present moment, which is why we are here, because there is more to the present moment than we realize most of the time. There's more to it. It's the access point to the deeper dimension within yourself. So as a general theme, underlying theme, I recommend, surprisingly, that you practice being in the present moment. Although you've been taken out of your usual surroundings, you have carried with you something else, and of course that's your mind that travels with you wherever you go. That is perhaps the meaning of a book that somebody wrote. I believe the title is Wherever You Go, There You Are. So wherever you go, you carry your mind and the conditioning of your mind with you. So that is the challenge here, to transcend the conditioning of your mind, the habitual way of interpreting, the habitual way of reacting to things, habitual mind patterns. If a mind pattern in you is that you frequently and very quickly become discontent with where you are, if that's a pattern in you, then that pattern will arise here also. If your mind pattern is one that loves complaining and finding fault with things, then it's very likely that very quickly this mind pattern will appear here also. So you get surprising things that your expectations are not met in various ways. And that is a challenge to the mind, to the conditioned mind, because the conditioned mind wants its expectations met. And if they are not met, it gets uneasy, restless, irritated, angry, starts talking about what's wrong, either silently in your mind or to others. And if others can agree with you, then it's even better. Or you can go on the internet and then you get 1,000 people agreeing with you. I'm not saying if there's something really wrong, you shouldn't do something to rectify it. So if something is leaking in your room, say, no, I'm not going to say anything because I'm not supposed to complain. No, of course. Say there's something there that needs to be rectified. It's not a complaint, it's just information. Complaint means there is an emotion behind it, and the emotion says this should not be happening. Then it becomes a complaint. Or it's your fault. Then it becomes a complaint. If it's simply presenting information, it's not a complaint, it's just a fact. And then the question is can anything be done about it? If yes, good. Like they say, there's nothing we can do. Do you go on insisting that this is very bad and create suffering for yourself? Or do you simply accept this is what is? So there's nature and there's the present moment. Here, now, here. Oh, and I thought there was nothing to be grateful for. I'm breathing. Now, yeah, there may be one or two people being with us here, there, who perhaps are stuck somewhere in a room and can't get out because of physical disability, or they may be in prison and they say, what can I do? What can we do? We can't get out into nature. Well, you need to remember that your body also is nature, so you can start there. Every time you take a breath, that's nature. Nature is breathing. The air that you're breathing is nature. The very fact of breathing is a natural process. It's not choice. It's done for you. It's not so much that you breathe, although we say, I breathe, but you're not the body breathes. So it's a natural thing that happens. You wouldn't say, I'm beating my heart. You don't do that, but that's the same thing. The body does it. It's a natural process. For some reason we say, I'm breathing, because breathing is semi-voluntary. You can stop it for a while, but not for that long, because if you stop it for too long, nature takes over. And you go, So nature says, nature, you live with nature, with your body. So even if you can't get out, you can start by being aware of that level of yourself, the physical level, the natural part of who you are, the body. And not just by saying, okay, I'm looking at my hands or my feet, not just the physical, not the external image of the body, but you can go into the body with your attention, and that's you're in nature. Even if you're in a prison cell, you can do that. And even if there's no opportunity, you might be in an office block in Manhattan, and you look out of the window and all you have is maybe a little bit of sky. Okay, there's a little bit of nature there, you can look at that. But you have more nature than that in yourself. So as you sat in your office, wherever it is, go within first, be conscious that breathing is happening. The body is breathing. Be conscious also of the preciousness of the air. It's such a precious substance. So to acknowledge that is actually part of what sometimes is called to live in a state of gratitude. Now, some people say, what can I be grateful for? There's nothing in my life that I can be grateful for. Well, are you breathing? Yes. Well, you start there. If you start being grateful for the tiniest things, then gradually that expands, and that shift in consciousness of honoring life, no matter how small it is, the manifestation of life as yourself, by honoring that, gratitude arises, and a totally different state of consciousness then brings about good things. But you have to start with the good that is already there. If you want, there's not enough good in my life, people say. I need more good. Life hasn't given me what I needed. Start with what you have, and the most obvious thing to start with is, I'm breathing. And that's something, it's something very beautiful to feel that you are absorbing this energy that is air, that then merges with your being. It's an amazing thing to honor the process of breath, to honor the fact that you are breathing. And that is, that you can start with that, that is becoming, honoring the present moment. If you're looking for the present moment, which is of course all there ever is, some people read it in The Power of Now and were surprised that and they're still surprised when I say the present moment is all there ever is in your life. There's nothing, there is no past and future in your experience except when you think about it, but not in your actual experience. Oh, well, yes, it's actually true. The greatest philosopher could come and he could not argue with the fact that you only ever experience the present moment, there is nothing else. The mind asks, well, where is the present moment? Well, start with your breath. That will always take you into the present moment because you're breathing now. And you're only ever taking one breath, this one. All other breaths you either remember or anticipate mentally. And it's actually said that the Buddha recommended this as a meditation, maybe even before the Buddha, but the Buddha certainly recommended that people should be aware of their breath as a meditation. He didn't say, as far as I know, that that will take you into the present moment, and he didn't say that will actually stop your mind too. He just said, be aware of your breath. So breath awareness meditation has become a Buddhist meditation that's practiced, but the dangerous thing is with practitioners of meditation is they make it into something to be achieved through it. They want to become good at it. You can't become good at one breath. This is just one breath. So there's nature and there's the present moment. Here, now, here. Oh, and I thought there was nothing to be grateful for. I'm breathing, or breathing is happening. And then as you become aware of that, you're beginning to feel that your body is also alive on the inside. To feel that there's an energy that is pervading the entire body. That's nature, and it's very close. That's the closest, and you can't get to a tree that close as you can to your body or anything else. So that's really the closest you can ever get to nature is there in yourself as the physical body. But when you become aware, now this is something for us, for each one of us to do right now, not to do, but to notice. There's no doing as such because we don't have to do anything. You can do, sometimes it helps to move about, to get a little bit of sense that your body is alive. That can help. But you can see the body is alive. Can I feel that? Yes, the breath is happening and there's aliveness in my feet, my hands, my legs. Very subtle at first, but it's there. And there's nature, and that's already a deeper level than what you see. Out in nature, when you look at a tree, you can't, to get deeper than the image of the tree, you have to have gone deeper within yourself so that you can sense the aliveness of the tree. You cannot sense the aliveness of the tree unless you can sense the aliveness in yourself. If you don't sense the aliveness in yourself, you're only approaching the tree with your mind, and your mind might say, oh, that's a nice tree, but you're missing the depth of it. You're missing the fact that there's more here than what the mind tells you there's here. When the mind says there's a tree or a flower or whatever it is, what you're looking at and call a tree and then believe that the word that you have attached to it is actually describes its reality. No, it's a label, it's an abstraction that you put onto this thing that you cannot really understand. It's a vitally alive, mysterious being with great depths, as much depth as you, because all life forms are connected and come out of the one source of life. So you're beginning to go to feel that when you feel the aliveness of the inner body. It's not quite the deepest source yet, but you're going towards the non-physical, the life energy that comes from the source. So connecting with yourself through breath and feeling the inner body is part of connecting with nature.